Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depends on where you are, what time zone you're in, or when you're watching this video. It is for me a great pleasure and indeed a great honor to share with you two distinguished gentlemen that I believe will add to the continuity of a deeper understanding of how we can get through the days ahead, what's involved with the CARES Act, what's involved with us, how do we better handle this pandemic from a financial perspective. And before I introduce him, I think I would preface my remarks by saying we realize that this video is being shown at a time that many families are going through great losses. Deep sympathy to you, deep concern, deep prayers to you, whether you have loved ones that are fighting for their lives or have succumbed to the disease. We still want to reach out to you with the sympathy and concern to you and for you, and know that our prayers and our full support is behind you. But the gentlemen that are here today are going to talk about the other aspect of the pandemic, not so much the biological medical aspect of it, though that is important too, and I'm sure it's going to come up. But they're going to focus on the economic part of it, which is a pandemic in and of itself from an economic standpoint to many, many people here and around the world who are suffering financially. I'm pleased to have my friend and brother Bakari Sellers here with us, who has previously served in the House of Representatives for the great state of South Carolina. He hails to us from Morehouse University. He has a law degree. He is a lawyer by profession, but lately you've probably seen him more and more on CNN as a commentator. Welcome, Bakari. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this much-needed conversation, Bishop.
In addition to having Bakari Sellers with us, we have also Kenneth Kelly. Kenneth has a very unique and prestigious background, serves as the chairman and CEO of First Independence Bank, a minority depository institution based in Detroit, Michigan. He's a respected leader in the banking community and currently serving as chairman of the National Bankers Association. He has a myriad of accomplishments. I want to welcome Kenneth to the conversation. Good to have you, sir.
Thank you so much, Bishop. We're glad to be here.
You know, gentlemen, these are unique times. In the 62 years of my life, I've never seen anything quite like it. I've seen a lot of things that have shaken this country, but nothing to the degree of what we are dealing with COVID-19. The impact of it has long-ranging ramifications for the country as a whole, for us as individuals, for African Americans and underserved communities in particular. And I wanted to just jump right in. We know that the CARES Act has been passed. A lot of people are asking a lot of questions out of the nearly 30 million people that are following us on social media. They're asking a lot of questions about who can apply, how do they apply. I'll jump right in with you, Kenneth, and see if you can add some insight for us.
Sure. Well, I'll talk about the piece that's really important to us as a community, and that's the $350 billion that you hear being discussed from time to time. And so over the last couple of weeks, that has been a moving ball. And as we all know, our communities, when America catches a cold, we've heard the expression, the African-American community catches the flu. And we're trying to do our best, Bishop, to ensure that our community is also at the table when the plate is being passed in a way that matters. And so we were fighting for it from the beginning, nonprofit organizations and churches. In fact, we saw a letter come out from the SBA yesterday that confirmed that churches will be fully without restriction, be able to participate, because we know churches are the backbone of the African-American community, regardless of where you live, what part of the country you're from. So we're very pleased that we've been a part of that and identifying those sources that need to be deployed, in particular to our community. So we can talk about that more in detail, but we're very pleased at this point that the opportunity is there for us to get to the table. Hopefully conversations like this one today will help enlighten our community of how they can participate.
So just to be clear, not-for-profits, for-profits, as well as churches, sole proprietorships, LLPs across the board are eligible if they have employees or they received income, whether they're sole proprietorships or not. They can also apply for these loans.
Yes, Bishop, let me say There's always the caveat. There are some nonprofits that are not. 501c3s do qualify. Some of the others, we need to look at the actual fine print. But if you have a 501c3, if your church is a 501c3, you would qualify.
That would also include CDCs and EDCs as a rule?
That's correct. If it's a 501c3, is my understanding, that's correct. But all of those, again, the intent here is to try to distribute information. We'll need to look at the fine print on all of that. But the 501c3 class in itself is included. And that came out in the SBA letter on yesterday.
There is a great deal of intimidation in going after a loan because people see it as a loan, but in reality, if the funds are used, as I understand them, to subsidize income, employment, and that sort of thing, then it ends up after a year becoming a grant, and there is no requirement to pay it back. Other monies that are used for other reasons would become a part of a loan, but that loan also is not due for a year. Is that accurate information?
It's close. Let me share what I know, and hopefully that'll be meaningful to this listening audience. So the way it's been described is really it's across an 8-week time frame. And the intent is you're getting a loan to continue payroll, and it should be used for payroll. There are some other benefits that you could do, such as rent and utilities, but that needs to be at a percentage, I believe, of about 75%. I don't remember the exact number that they come in the final ruling. That has to be used for payroll. If it is used for payroll, then after 8 weeks, you will have to prove that you use that for payroll, and then that's when it will be forgiven. The loan tenor is roughly 1%. It actually can be expanded for a 2-year period, and actually will be deferred for 6 months. So if you get this loan, you really wouldn't have to make any payments for 6 months before you go into that process. But what we would advise is people go ahead, if they can, go ahead and apply for the loan, apply for the adder, which will allow for things like utilities, rent, etc. of their business, but ensure that you spend that money on payroll, because if not, then you'll be at liberty of not having it relieved as a grant.
When you start talking about the PPP, which is a payroll protection program, what is the extent of how much can be applied for? How large?
Let me jump in here.
Well, actually, I think it's up to, and I don't remember the exact number, I believe it was up to 10 million that could be applied. And the way that it actually works is that they will cap salaries at 100,000. So basically, if someone was in a company and they were the leader of that organization and their salary was 150,000, then that 50,000, which is on top of the 100, wouldn't count in the pool. But you could apply for all salaries across the board up to the 100,000 as part of your salary base across that time period. And the way the factor actually works is 2.5 times that. So that gives you that extra room to make the payments, as we talked about, for utilities and rent. But you need to be sure, I believe that 75% is the latest ruling on that would have to be used for payroll.
Bakari, you wanted to jump in?
I was just going to jump in and say that this is extremely important because it's $369 billion that's set aside from this $2 trillion program. And whether or not I'm actually sitting in my wife's small business office right now, or whether or not you're a barber or a beauty salon, whether or not you have a mowing company, you're an independent contractor, or kind of the way this conversation came about is because, thank you for giving us this platform, Bishop Jakes. I texted you and told you I was concerned not as much about the Potter's House, but about some of these smaller Black churches throughout the country and throughout the South. We've seen a couple of things happen with COVID. We've seen that it's disproportionately affecting communities of color in terms of public health. If you look at Alabama, it's having the largest mortality rate of any state in the union. Alabama, the majority of those are going to be African-American. You look at Michigan and you see in Louisiana. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that we look at this holistically and also look at the economic approach. The United States Congress will go back into session on April 20th. When they go back into session on April 20th, I know there are people out here who are saying, what is 8 weeks going to get me? And Ken is giving you all of the nuts and bolts to make sure that you go in and apply. It's a 5-minute application, Ken, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 10 minute kind of digital portfolio that you go and apply through. But in a few more weeks, I believe the United States Congress will go in and they will make sure that they extend this program just that much further, because we don't know how long we'll be in this malaise. But I do want individuals, everyone that's listening under the sound of my voice right now and under the sound of our voices right now, just to spend some time and apply and make sure that those small businesses that we patronize on a daily basis are still there when this is over. Because my fear is that African-American communities, smaller Black churches, smaller nonprofits, small businesses are going to miss out on these opportunities. And when we emerge from COVID, they'll no longer be there.
I share that concern with you, having pastored a small church for a number of years. I understand the nuances of trying to keep your head above water, but let's be clear, even for the mega churches, the larger churches, it is still a huge, huge problem. In some ways, even more so because you have so many people on staff. The Potter's House has nearly 300 people on staff. So when you look at that debt load and very little income coming in throughout this period and everybody shut up in the house, it is easy to either have to lay off that amount of people or to go into some sort of foreclosure should you have a mortgage, that sort of thing. So there's a lot. I don't know anybody that doesn't need this kind of relief right now. And everybody should be taking notes on it. I'm glad that you said what you did about the simplicity of the form, because a lot of people are intimidated about the form. I want to talk also about another area of intimidation, and either one of you can jump in on it. It has very little to do, or maybe I should just phrase it as a question. A lot of people are afraid to go after the loan because they don't have the kind of credit rating that is necessary. They've been turned down in the past. They feel like they have a scarlet letter on their head, and they're afraid to apply for loans because they don't feel like their credit will pass scrutiny.
Well, I'll take it first, because this is what I'm thankful for. I always tell people the two most important words in the English language are the words thank you. And I'm thankful for you, Bishop Jakes, but I'm also thankful for the National Bankers Association, which is a collaboration of our Black and minority banks, because usually if you're able to have a relationship with your bank, they will help you through this process. And so I advise people not just to find those banks, but to go to banks that you have those relationships with to help you fill out and facilitate this process. I'll let Ken take it a little bit further in talking about what they look for, but please do not let this process intimidate you. Your workers depend on it, your family depends on it. Don't let this process intimidate you. This is an easier process than most. You can apply for up to $10 million if you need it, if you have those large number of employees, and it doesn't matter how small you are. You could be the only person on the payroll. So don't let this, you can be an independent contractor. Do not let this process intimidate you. Ken?
Well, thanks, Bakari. You said it so well. And so there are two components. Independent contractors that piece will be opened up on this upcoming Friday. But what I would say and reiterate that Bakari just described is that we collectively, culturally, sometimes out of embarrassment or lack of knowledge, kind of close in and put our arms around ourselves and not go out and ask for help. My way of describing this best is to be sure that if you're in a community, you got a business associate next to you, collectively figure out what is going on, not just related to this program, but there are a lot of local municipalities and a lot of states that have aid programs that can assist you. But it's very true what Bakari said. Follow through with your existing banking relationship. Their intent is to be there to help you and help us in our communities on this issue. And so do the best we can, but what I would say is over-communicate. There's nothing to be ashamed of through this process because everyone else is going to come to the table. And what I would tell you we're seeing right now is the sophisticated businesses that have large lobbying firms and large staffs of accountants, et cetera. They can click a button and all of their information is transferred over right away. And for some of our businesses, sometimes we do all of that by hand and sometimes may not have it all neatly packaged. And so you have to work through that. But what I would say to you is let's just work through that or find someone who can help you with that assistance, because it is there for us to participate and to be able to do exactly as been stated, feed our families and continue to take care of our businesses.
We've talked a little bit about what is going on in the African-American community. In the Latino community, however, they have some of the same challenges that we do, but they also have the addition of having undocumented people who are doing business working out here in the workforce who are being unduly hit. Is there an opportunity for an undocumented worker to apply for these loans?
I don't know the details on that, Bishop, to be candid with you. I don't know if Bakari, if you do, I'll.
Well, currently there are no prohibitions. However, the requirements when you go into Ken's office, if you have a daycare, or if you have a landscaping service, or if you own a dental office, they are not asking you as of right now to check a particular box of whether or not you're documented or not. But what they are asking for is you to have your payroll information in order, your bank statements in order, et cetera. I can't imagine Ken asking anyone for their quote unquote papers when they come in trying to get access to this loan program. And so if anyone that's hearing that is a deterrent, I'm easy to find on Instagram or Twitter, please DM me so we can work through that. Because right now what we don't want is we don't want individuals who are in the shadows to have to be in the shadows during this moment right now. We want everyone to take advantage of this program.
Is there a difference, gentlemen, in the go ahead, Kenneth.
No, go ahead, please, Bishop.
Is there a difference in the documentation that is required for a church as opposed to a small business entity? And I've been told that in order to apply, it has to be a bank that has an SBA loan department in the bank.
That part is not true. And one of the things that happened in this was the advocacy to allow all federally and state chartered institutions to participate. Now, that doesn't mean that they are ready today. Friday, if you probably follow the news, was a little bit challenging in the banking space just because of the overload on the network. But the way it was set up was to allow for federally chartered banks and credit unions, and also some unique fintechs to be able to participate in this program. I believe the total number that I heard most recently was about 9,000 different entities will create the platform for being able to get these dollars out. Mm-hmm. Back to your question, Bishop, regarding the form, there is no difference from our perspective in the form. It's simple as Bakari just mentioned, and so we're using the same form regardless of the institution.
Considering the fact that many of the states around the country are in lockdown mode right now, and we're discouraged from going out and going public, is there a way to apply online?
Yes, that is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's the number one way by which you apply. I don't want individuals risking their public health to go down to First Citizens or BB&T and wait. In fact, it's a lot easier when you're able to do this online. And let me just say, by doing this now, Bishop, by being on the front side of this, when there is a second, third, or fourth iteration of this is, I believe, the third stimulus package that's come down. There will be a fourth and a fifth one. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that individuals have everything they need, whether or not it's for their individual Trump checks, for lack of a better term, that will be coming eventually, whether or not they're trying to get the economic injury disaster loan, which is a smaller loan that individuals can get, or whether or not they're filing for unemployment. I want people to get their business in order now. So when 4 and 5 come down, we're still not chasing our tail. In fact, we're there with our not asking for a handout per se, asking for a handout.
When you start talking about getting your business in order, initially when they first opened up the program, one of you alluded to it a moment ago, there seemed not to be cohesiveness between the CARES Act and the banks themselves. In fact, it seemed like everybody was pulling their hair out trying to get up to speed. How close are we to actually having a functioning program that is not met with a lot of...
This is not CNN, so I'm going to let Ken answer that. I'm going to sit back. I'm not going to treat you like we treat our friend Don Lemon.
Hey, Bishop, it sounds like we're about to wade into a political discussion now. So I would go ahead, Bakari. What were you about to say?
That's all yours, my brother.
No, so it's a little bit political, as you can imagine. The discussion about a week and a half ago to say that funds were going to flow on Friday was made. And so everything was done around trying to make that happen. The rules were being developed in the process of getting them done. And I will tell you, as recently as last night, we had even more new guidance. So we're learning as we go. I would say that's on the governmental side and even on the banking side of what we need to be able to execute. It's challenging right now is the best way that I would sum it up, but the intent is hopefully we'll get this thing running not on just 4 cylinders, but 8 cylinders here pretty quickly.
So we have the payroll protection program, and we also have the EIDL, which we talked a little bit about. What other programs exist for our consideration that we might not know about, that we don't hear about, that we could also apply for in our local municipalities?
Let me comment on the EIDL.
Sure.
Because it's an important aspect. And I was laughing and joking with you earlier, saying I look like Tom Hanks on Castaway because I haven't seen my barber recently. And as me and my friends talk about all the time, we won't cheat on our wives and we won't cheat on our barbers. Those are 2 things we will not do. And so my barber, for example, I sent them the application because it's an immediate $10,000 infusion into your small business. And we know that at hair salons, at small shops, at bakeries, at barbershops, that $10,000 can be the difference between staying open and closing. My good friend Jared Lodholt, who was kind of the glue to help me get with the National Bankers Association, was just telling me the story. We talk every day. He's a godfather to my children, and he was telling me how he went by his old barbershop, well, his current barbershop, and within 2 weeks it had already shut down. I mean, the windows, it was already gone, and the chairs were gone and everything. So these EIDLs are very important. You can apply for an EIDL. It would be an immediate infusion of up to $10,000 very quickly. They do take that $10,000, and Ken can probably speak to this. I believe I'm correct. They do take this $10,000 away. They subtract it from whatever you may get from the payroll protection program. So just keep that in mind.
That's correct.
But it can be the difference between life and death, and so that's important. The other thing I want people to know about is when you file for your unemployment. This is key. In various places around the country. Thank you to Jim Clyburn and Steny Hoyer and Nancy Pelosi, and even my Republicans on the right everybody came together. That was pretty unique about this. They added an extra $600 to the formula that's put in place for your unemployment. What that means is that in South Carolina, if you are a bartender and you make $300, when you go file for unemployment, you get 50% of that, which means you get $150. Well, what they've done is they say you get that formula plus $600. And so that it will be your weekly amount to help you, to help subsidize you through this downturn. It's not going to put together families. I don't want people to think that, but it will give you some help. So one of the more amazing parts about this program is the Trump check. And I want people to understand that everybody's not getting it. That's first and foremost. If you'll get $1,200 for those individuals who make up to $75,000 or households that make $150,000, that number will be rationed to be slightly lower, up to $99,000 or $198,000. They will go based upon, even if I know a lot of people have filed taxes already, they will go based upon your 2018 taxes. I had to remember what this has been. March has been the longest year I've ever been a part of, so I had to go back and think about that 18 taxes. But they will not hold it against you if you owe any outstanding back taxes. But they will hold it against you for one thing, fellas, and I need to make sure everybody knows this. If you have outstanding child support. If you have outstanding child support, you will not get your $1,200 check, and it's $500 per child. If you have outstanding child support, you will not qualify for any of those things. The most important thing is go to the irs.gov website. It's a link that'll be provided here. Go to the irs.gov website and make sure that they have your direct deposit information. If they have your direct deposit information, you will begin to receive payments on the 17th of April of this month. If they have to mail out a paper check, it will take up to 4 months for you to receive this money. And hopefully we'll be out of all of this. There is a huge difference between direct deposit and getting a paper check from the IRS. So go to irs.gov and make sure they have all the information they need. So between that and the stimulus check that you will receive eventually, hopefully people will be able to get through this tough time right now.
When you look at this situation that we're in right now, I know neither of you have a crystal ball, but can you forecast how long we might, because we have two classes of people. One, we have those that have already been laid off, and you just spoke to unemployment and how important it is for them to go after it, and that they can also be eligible for the additional $600 that you talked about. But then there's the groups that's trying to stay in business and keep from joining the unemployment lines. Those people also need consideration in order to do this. But all of us, regardless of which side of the track we're on, are holding our breath, wanting to know, how long do you think that we're going to be in the situation that we're in right now economically?
Oh, well, let me jump in and just tell you kind of where we think we are in just the political kind of public health sphere, and I'll let, because I believe that Kenneth would say that we are either on the brink of a recession or in a recession. You know, the market, you know, people are just visualizing this. People will be, whenever that time comes, back on the street wearing masks. 401ks will be completely dwindled. Unemployment rate will be through the roof. 26% of the American economy is shut down today. That is an unheard of type of number. The problem with the virus, though, is that it rolls in waves. It rolls in waves. And so we expect to see the peak in terms of death and hardship in places like Michigan and New York around April 10th or 11th. And that's when you'll get to that apex. But the blessing about apexes is we know that once you go up the hill, there is coming down the hill on the other side. And so in New York and Michigan, there's a hope that this month you'll start to see that come down on the other side. In places like Louisiana, further on over, we're hopeful that California and Washington State maintain its trajectory. But Ken can speak to how that's going to balance with the financial malaise that we're in. Because as the virus comes and it kind of dissipates as we go into summer, it's going to be interesting to see the financial aspect, because we do know one thing, Bishop, that the virus will come back with a vengeance in the fall, in the winter months. And the question is, will we be prepared economically? Will we be prepared with the PPE, the ventilators, vaccines, therapeutics, everything we need when it comes back, so we don't have to go through this again and the effect that it have on our bottom line? So I'll let Ken take that.
Sure. Thanks, Bakari. Bishop, we're just trying to take it one day at a time. You know, take Matthew 6 and think about the bird getting fed, and it's just going to be a go one step at a time. The challenge is just as Bakari just stated, which is if we try to rush back too fast, we're going to get a backlash that's going to be worse. And so the irony of all of this is it's being prolonged to even get to an apex because we can't get everybody on the same page of how to even deal with the prevention piece. So we're finally getting to the point of now talking about everyone wearing a mask, which will make a difference, but we're seeing it show up in spots and places, as we just talked about earlier. Albany, Georgia has become a hot spot because of 2 funerals. So we've got to take this seriously, as I think you said earlier, Bishop. The long-term effect is just as Bakari said, which is now our behaviors will change. You know, I'm eating in more than I probably eaten in a long time on a daily basis, now 3 meals a day. So how does that impact the restaurants that have typically relied on us? And as Bakari made note, we all love our barbers, but I had to shave the side of my head the other day on my own because of what we're talking about. So hopefully we can get to a point where this settles down and move in such a way that, you know, we can kind of ease out of this. But I just really don't know how to project forward what it looks like. We're really trying to do 2 things really right now, which is get everybody to understand this is a life issue first, and then secondly, it is a livelihood issue, meaning the economic piece of it.
When you look at the fact, I know neither one of you are medical doctors, but I wanted to talk a little bit about lowering that curve that we're all working to lower by social distancing. I see it in some cases a nonchalance amongst people of faith, amongst people of color, for various reasons. I think so much of our faith is built around fellowship, and so much of our ethnicity is built around a sense of community, that we're kind of like feeling like if I know you, or if you're my cousin or you're my relative, we can hang out together, I know you. But that I think it's a false sense of security and a very dangerous sense of security. I would love for either one of you to speak to how disciplined we need to be in order to win this battle over this disease.
Let me tell you something that Sanjay Gupta says all the time. Every single person should act like they have the virus. act like you have the virus and do not infect anyone else. Stay within your home. We actually, my daughter had a liver transplant, as you know, Bishop, and so we have an immunosuppressed daughter. So we don't play any games with it. There's nothing we want to bring back in this house. We're washing our hands. When we go to the grocery store on our once-a-week trip, we're wearing masks. We strip off our clothes at the door. And let me tell you how this economic conversation that we're talking about impacts, that public health impacts our communities of faith. Because I'm from Denmark, South Carolina. I still had people, we're taping on Sunday, who still had church this morning in some of these small churches. And the reason being is not because they are just flaunting the law or not believing. Many times it's because they believe that they need to be open that day so that they can be open when this is over. There's a fear that they will not be able to survive. And so by making sure that these churches and everyone knows about programs such as the PPP program, et cetera, that intersects with public health. So now maybe some of these churches will make sure that they're not open on these days. But we have to take it seriously. It's affecting Black people, brown people, beyond belief. I think everyone has someone. Bishop C. Wright, Antoine C. Wright, one of my really good friends in the AME church. Antoine told me his mother. They just got the results back before we joined on this call today. She's having trouble breathing. Ted James, a state representative who is my peer group. We're millennials. I don't know, you two older gentlemen may not be millennials, but we're millennials.
Be kind, brother.
But
that's a compliment, Bishop.
It's jumping on us too. It's jumping on us too. So I want my young people who are watching this, young people realize this is not an old folks illness. This is something that we have to take seriously.
I think it's very, very important.
I fully agree. I was going to say, Bishop, I fully agree. I unfortunately had a lot of travel the first part of this month through DC, Chicago, the Federal Reserve, and Detroit. And we lost one of our icons there in Detroit, and Mr. and Dr. O'Neill Swanson, who managed the services for Rosa Parks, Aretha Franklin, and many others. And this thing is very serious. And I will tell you, just at a personal level, my daughter came home right at now 3 weeks ago from FAMU, and I have not given her a hug. And I don't mean that to say that this is something lightly, but when she came in, we tried to keep our distance. And, the first couple of days when all the college kids got out, they still wanted to flock. And I had to just basically tell her, baby, you're going to have to find somewhere else to stay. This is how serious this is. And so that created the cocoon that we've basically been in now for the last close to 2.5 weeks. But the point I'm trying to make in bringing this up is we have to take this serious. Yes, I trust you. Yes, I love you. But we got to treat it like everyone is potential for having the virus, and they can very easily pass it.
I want to say something to all the pastors that are listening out there. I know very few pastors who have disregarded the social distancing, who have not ultimately ended up with somebody who had the COVID-19 virus and or death as a result of it. First off, there's a moral responsibility. There's a godly responsibility to make sure that as a shepherd, you are protecting your sheep. I know that God is a healer. I know that God is a way maker, but quite frankly, the Bible said we should not tempt God either. Jesus did not cast himself off the mountain just to prove that he was the Son of God, and you should not bring people into dangerous situations just to prove that you're truly anointed. Maybe you do survive, but maybe they don't, or their grandparents don't. And I'm afraid, pastors, and I'm not a lawyer, but I'm afraid that if you willfully neglect the information that is so readily available and there is a death, that you could be sued for negligence in the long run. When we get to grieving and come out of this, there's going to be some dangerous repercussions for pastors who flagrantly disregard the law and insist on going in their own way and use their influence to the detriment of their congregation. Am I on track about that?
Well, you are, and they actually are picking up some pastors in certain states. I believe it was Tampa just recently, yes, and charging them with misdemeanors. Definitely in Florida, and charging them with misdemeanors. And I'm not picking on pastors or churches or anything of that sort, but what I am saying is that we have to understand the seriousness of this virus. We found out about it in November. We didn't start purchasing PPE and ventilators in this country until middle of March when we should have. And now we're playing catch up. I believe that there's going to be a conversation soon rather than later when public health meets the economy. and Bishop Jakes and pastors, that's when we're going to need your prayer for wisdom, because there's going to be a question of whether or not we open this entire thing back up when you reach that kind of apex or precipice, because there's this theory that we can't leave the United States closed too long because the government, because the economy is just not something you can wake up overnight, and they're going to balance that against public health risk and concern. And so that's when we need prayers and wisdom. But as of right now, just take it as seriously as death, because that's what it is.
It is important also that you understand a lot of rumors are running around in the faith community that this is government infusing its authority over the church and the separation of church and state. But that is absolutely untrue. From the NFL to the NBA, everybody's shutting down everything. Restaurants are closed, businesses are closed, branches of government are closed. This is not just about the church. If it were just about the church, I would be on the other side of the argument, fighting for the liberties and the rights and the religious freedoms that exist for us in this country. This is not about religious rights. This is about human rights. It's about life. It's about liberty. It's about the pursuit of happiness. And you can't do that on a ventilator, and you can't do that if you're passed away. So pastors, please don't buy into the myth that this is government and big government infusing itself and imposing itself rather on the freedoms of the church. This is much, much, much bigger than that. We are in a fight not only for the soul of this country and for the people of this country, but for the people on this planet. This is a global crisis. So to all of the pastors who are hearing me all over the world, please give this some real consideration. When you say, what would Jesus do? Jesus would take care of the flock. He would do what was best for the flock. And if you have the kind of healing power that can heal your flock, we don't need you at church. We need you at the hospital. Yeah, we need you going up and down the aisles of those COVID-19 wards, laying hands on people and raising them up. Anything short of that, you need to be on the side of caution and shut down the service, close down the service, minimize the service, get online, do streaming, do whatever you can do, distance yourself. And these programs are designed so that finances will not be a deterrent in you being able to make that decision. You can find other ways to minister, and especially if you can maintain your livelihood and keep yourselves above water. Let me ask you what I should have asked you and perhaps did not. Is there something pressing that you want to get out to the public that we did not talk about?
The thing that I would say right now is, engage your banker. If you don't have a banker, find one to talk to about these programs and apply, as Bakari mentioned. But at a very high level, I think culturally, one of the things we need to do is think about this in terms of how does this impact all of us? And I'm going to get to the basics of a documentary that I participated in that's not out yet, but it was focused on, from an Afrocentric perspective, actually economics, politics, and culture. And you're seeing that play out in real life right now in DC, and watching how politics is really driving how money will be distributed, which areas may get more and or less, which areas may get more and or less PPE. And so it's becoming upon all of us, I think, as leaders now to really step up from a leadership perspective and figure out how we need to engage from a political perspective, because it directly translates to economics and it directly impacts our culture. As Bakari just mentioned a moment ago, you're seeing the numbers in Michigan, where our institution is based. 40-ish% of the people who are dying are African American. And so those are things that are precipitated by not having health care, not having the insurance to go take care of yourself early, and being more at risk when you do get these kinds of things that happen in our community. And so the long story short is economics, politics, and culture are all interrelated. And so I'd like to see our culture get a lot more engaged so that we can be more effective about the people that we care about.
I'm glad to hear you address that, because I had read somewhere that African Americans were unusually high on the Richter scale when it comes to death and contracting the virus. And I wondered if there were any reasons that contributed to it. And so you clearing that up really helps me a lot. Do you think that there is something that we can do? What I'm trying to do from my platform is to use my platform to get the word out, because a lot of us are not listening at the right articles and interviews. We're picking up propaganda from social media We're gargling with hot water and we think that kills it. We're holding our breath trying to do tests to see if we have it. There's all kinds of rumors out there for a long time. We didn't think that Black people got it because that was on social media. What can we do to get accurate information and get our people to act on these opportunities that we're talking about, and also get accurate information as it relates to the political discourse that's going on in this country right now, and how important it is that we pay attention to what's going on?
Well, I would definitely say trust but verify. I have to get on my mama sometimes about this, about sending me information from Facebook, because that may not be a worthy news source. I love you, Mom. But I will say that, seek out information and news that you trust right now, those voices that you trust. Listen to people who are the experts in this. With all due respect, I was an elected official. I'm not the person per se that you should be listening to about what's going to happen with public health next week. I want you to listen to Dr. Fauci from the NIH. I want you to listen to those experts, the Sanjay Guptas, who understand what's going on. Not the snake oil salesman, but listen to the people who have your best interest at heart, do not necessarily care about everything else that's going on around them, but only want to make sure that we get the therapeutics, that we find the vaccine, that we social distance and take the precautions necessary, so that the numbers that they're predicting between 100,000 and 240,000 don't escalate any higher in terms of death. That's very important. Listen to the experts on this matter, not just those people who are shade tree lawyers or shade tree doctors.
Bakari, I wanted to ask you a question, and we're almost to the end of this. We're hearing the numbers. We're hearing the stats go up. We're hearing the masses of people reaching up to 1,000 a day that are now succumbing to COVID-19. But we are not seeing it. The media is not showing it to us. And I think that in the minds of some, and I think that is to keep down hysteria. But how do you balance between controlling hysteria and heightening awareness as it relates to how serious this my numbers show that there are more people who are dying of this than have in the last 2 wars that we fought. And yet we're not seeing those bodies. I'm reading about refrigeration having to be brought into New Orleans to hold some of the bodies because the morgues can't hold them. We are not seeing this, but this is happening all around us. And I'm afraid the fact that we don't see the visuals makes us not really pay attention to the numbers.
Well, I'll give you a very tangible reason why you can't see this like you can see everything else. They have actual refrigeration trucks in some of the hospitals in New York City where the bodies come out and they put them in the refrigeration trucks. But I want to take your mind's eye back to when we started seeing this new heightened occurrence of police violence against unarmed Black men, because we had the cell phone video and everybody could film the video and see what's going on. With COVID, it's a very lonely virus. When individuals get COVID, they die alone. When your family can't be in there with you, they have to give you last rites over the phone. Doctors and nurses aren't in there with you. And so it's very difficult. You see the images of people who may do a Facebook Live or may do a FaceTime when they're fighting the illness. But when the illness gets on you and you can no longer breathe and you can no longer string those sentences together and you can no longer broadcast those messages, then the lights go out. And the lights go out and no one's around you to capture those images. When the lights go out with COVID, there's no big memorial service. There aren't 50 people around you because you can't get that close to individuals, even in death, because the virus is that contagious. And so I want to make sure that people understand that this is a very, very serious disease and illness that's out there. The only thing we didn't talk about, Bishop, and I'll just mention it briefly, there are programs in the stimulus bill for homeless individuals. There are programs in the stimulus bill for those who are renters. There's a moratorium against evictions right now. So if you actually have a landlord that's trying to evict you, please DM me. We'll get to the bottom of that for you. We'll do our very best. And for those who are paying mortgage, if your mortgage is backed by Freddie, those mortgage payments will accrue, but you do get some relief. So you would need to kind of sort that out and figure that out. There's a lot in there for people. Just find that information and take this virus very seriously.
That's very, very important. Thank you for including the homeless people. This is such a dangerous time for them. It's hard for them to distance themselves, as well as people who are in the criminal justice system. How do you distance yourself when you're in the penal institutions? There are so much to be worried about today. Thank you, both of you, for adding your expertise and your wisdom and sharing it with our audience. And as we close today, I just wanted to do a special shout out to those who are on the front lines of this fight, who don't have the luxury of not seeing the bodies. You're seeing the bodies, you're treating the bodies, you're the doctors, you're the nurses, you're the housekeepers, you're the technicians, you're the people that are carrying the food and cleaning up the rooms and putting yourselves at risk every day in stressful, unbelievable situations. We just want you to know that we love you, that we appreciate you, that we are so grateful for you and for your expertise and for your service. And we recognize that you are fighting a battle against an invisible attack and an invisible assailant that threatens the future of this country. And without signing up to be in the military and without getting your degree, ever thinking that you would be on the front lines of a war, you are really on the front lines of a war. You are the present day heroes of this country, and we celebrate you so much. We also want to thank Mr. Kelly and Mr. Sellers for lending their extensive wisdom and expertise to this conversation and bringing it out here to the public so that we can have a better bird's eye view of what we need to do in the days ahead in order to be a part. I will include any websites and information on this video that will help you to readily access information in various categories that will help you to be strengthened. I will also include helplines for people that are suicidal, that are depressed, that need counseling, that need encouragement, as well as information about how to access the finances. And we're doing all of this because we care about you, and this is everybody's battle, and everybody has to be in on it. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you both so much.
Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks.